Good morning, YouTube, BookTube. This is Johnny, and I thought I'd make a video on the first day of January the 1st, 2025. It is 11:38 in the late morning here in Southwest Michigan. It's a Wednesday, and outside it's snowing, and yeah, I'm sitting here and I'm feeling woozy, and I don't know why. I don't know what it is, why I've been feeling woozy lately. I wrote a note this morning to my doctor asking him what he thinks, why I have these episodes of feeling woozy. Is it anxiety? Is it panic? Whatever it is. I do been taking Xanax, which is Xanax, something like that. So I've been taking those, which are supposed to kind of relieve whatever you're feeling. So, but I wanted to say in these videos, Happy New Year, 2025. Yeah, we're having family over this afternoon. Our oldest son and his family, who live down the street, our two granddaughters, and Carol's younger brother and his wife are coming. And we're going to have food and watch football. And yeah, that's how we bring in the New Year's. Last night, my wife and I, we watched some football. My wife falls asleep. She goes to bed early and gets up early. And I sat there in our living room watching football on mute, and I was reading this book, Union with Christ, Salvation as Participation, by Jordan Cooper, Contemporary Protestant Scholastic Theology. I ordered another book of his last night. He wrote a book called, it's here, what was it called? Cooper. Christification, a Lutheran approach to Theos. That's what I bought by him. Yeah, I'm really finding this interesting. And I also have been carrying around in my afflicted state the Meditations on the Life and Passion of Christ by John Tuller, who lived from 1300 and he died in 1361. Was a German Dominican theologian, preacher, and devotional writer. He had a profound influence in his own time as both clergy and laity. Toller was a man of profound spiritual devotion. He preached against a purely external Christianity defined by empty ritual. Faith for Toller included a personal relationship between the triune God and the believer. And that's what I believe. I believe that what is Christianity? It's a personal relationship with the triune God. That's what it is. A Christian is one who has a relationship, a living, intimate relationship with the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, the triune God. So I've been reading this, carrying around, and it's the Meditations on the Life and Passion. So he focuses on the death of Christ, leading up to his crucifixion. And I'm really being blessed by it. And I ordered his sermons in the Classics of Western Spirituality. John Tuller there is a volume devoted to John Tuller in the Classics of Western Spirituality, and I ordered that too recently. So I've been reading those. And I told you I went to the Blue Stockings bookshop this week, and there was a $1 bag sale. And I haven't shown those used books. I'll get around to it. But one of the books I bought, put in the $1 bag sale, was this book, Invitation to Sociology, A Humanistic Perspective by Peter L. Berger. I have other books by him, and that's why I picked this up. He wrote a book called The Noise of Solemn Assemblies, The Precarious Vision, The Sacred Canopy. I think I have The Sacred Canopy. Anyway, I picked this up, and it was published in 1963. But I don't know. I've been reading it at night down the lower level and finding it interesting. I always find his writings interesting. He well, when I finished high school, get my timeline out here. I graduated from high school in 1970, the same year the Lord Jesus Christ saved me. And when I went to a junior college, which was 1971. I was 19 years old, and I attended Contra Costa Junior College in San Pablo, California. And I thought about being a social worker, because when I had a social worker named Tom Armstrong. Never will forget that guy. Very nice guy, and I really kind of respected him, and so I thought, well, maybe that's what I would become, would be like a social worker. So I took classes on sociology the first year I was in junior college. And so I've always been kind of interested in sociology, even though I know very little. But this book, basically I got this book out because of Peter L. Berger. So I've been reading this at night. And I'm still reading The Messiah at Stockholm by Cynthia Ozak. Yeah, I read this last night too before I went to bed. Little novella. It's only about doesn't have page numbers on it. Oh, yes, it does. It's about maybe 143 pages. And I've read, how many pages? About 45. And I've still been reading. I try to read this in the afternoons when the TV's on mute, and the football, Philosophy of Walking by Frederick Groth. And this was translated by John Howe. And this is a verso book. And I haven't really read this in a couple of days, The Liberius by Patrick DeWitt, a novel. So yeah, that's what I've been reading in my afflicted state. And this morning, my wife and I, going through the Gospel of Mark, we ended on chapter 9, which just goes into the transfiguration of Christ. I have a book up here I just read on the transfiguration of Christ. I think I showed you. This book I just read on the transfiguration of Christ, an exegetical and theological reading by Patrick Schneider. And I really enjoyed this book. I recommend it. So I read other books on the Transfiguration. Is it up here? I don't think it's up here. But anyway, in reading the book of Psalms, Psalm 19. So, but yeah, I wanted to stop and just say Happy New Year. Have a blessed New Year. Yeah, who knows what the year 2025 will be like. I'm on my first page of page 1 of my January 1st, 2025 diary. Yeah, I put away my December 2024 diary last night down the lower level. Our granddaughter, Josie and Cora were here yesterday helping Nani make pig in the blankets, and Nora comes into my study and she noticed I was writing, and she said, "What are you doing?" And she wanted to know what that number was in the corner there. And I said, well, that's how many pages I've written in the year 2024. And it was like 1,104. And she said, she was kind of curious about it. And she said, when I grow up, I want to be an illustrator and I'll illustrate your diaries. And I told little Cora, well, that's a lot of diaries. And she said she wanted to see all my diaries. So I took her downstairs in the lower level and showed her all the different boxes going up to, I said, you see all those boxes? They're all full of diaries. And then I showed her diaries from 2022, 2023, 2024. And I said, that's a lot of diaries. How are you going to illustrate it? So she didn't. She kind of thought about it. But everybody knows that when Papa goes to heaven, that they are supposed to destroy my diaries. But sometimes I thought, one of the fantasies I have is if I had the money, I would store them in a storage unit. But then I probably would miss them because I like being, like my diaries, my paper diaries. Just like this morning, I took photos of my January 2000. See, the first day of the year, the first day of the month, I always take pictures of my paper diaries and I post them in 2 live journal communities, Paper Expressions and Embodiment. Many years ago, somebody started those communities where people post or show their diaries or journals, and I have been doing it for a number. I'm the only person that does it. And but I take pictures of my diary and then I show books. And one of the books I showed that I got out was these books. I ordered somebody mentioned in one of my diary entries, not my diary entries, but one of my videos, he said, have you looked at this book? And it was a book by this fellow, Michael J. Claymon, and I have books by him. I have this book, which is The Devil's Redemption, A New History and Interpretation of Christian Universalism. This is a big, massive 2-volume work. I bought it a number of years ago. I haven't read it, but I collect his books. He's written books on Jonathan Edwards' Encountering with God, Approach to the Theology of Jonathan Edwards by Michael Claymon. And I have another book of his that he co-wrote with other Edwardian scholars, The Theology of Jonathan Edwards. So anyway, I ordered that book last night too. It's kind of like a textbook on the history of Christian spirituality by this guy. And so I got this out and I took pictures of these 2 volumes for to go along. You know, I put when I post photos of my January 2025 paper diary, I always show books. So I showed these books, and I showed this book, Encounters with God, Approach to Theology, Jonathan Edwards, and then I showed Union with Christ, Salvation and Participation by Jordan Cooper, and then I showed this book on Meditations on the Life and Passion of Christ by John Toller. So yeah, there's always books coming into the Hermit Hut. Now some people ask me about the Hermit Hut, and somebody commented and asked me, are you a hermit? Well, I'm not a hermit. Now I do know that there are churches, maybe Catholic Church, some Episcopalian, that you can be, there is an office or calling to be a hermit, and I'm not a hermit. But I use that because I'm kind of a loner, a recluse. Like I've said to you in these videos over the years, that if my wife was to pass away, if she goes first to heaven, that I told her that I would just withdraw from the world. I mean, I wouldn't move out of this house, because this house, as I have mentioned to you, is the first home that I've really known in my entire life. Now, my wife, she grew up here in Holland in a traditional Christian home, and then when she finished high school, she went off to nursing school. And that home, when her mother got elderly, they sold her home. It was bought by Hope College here in Holland. But she grew up in that house, you know, up until she went to nursing school. I never had a home. When I was growing up, my mother was divorced a couple of times, and we lived in little duplexes or apartments, and we were always moving, and I never really had a home. And when I married Carol, I married Carol in 1979. Carol and I got married, and I was 27 years old. And we lived in a little tiny apartment in Grand Rapids, because I was going to Reformed Bible College, and Carol was working at a local hospital. And then after I graduated from Reformed Bible College in 1981, I was 29 years old. We went and moved down to Jackson, Mississippi. In 1983, we moved to Jackson, Mississippi to attend Reformed Theological Seminary, and I was 31 years old, and Josiah and Caleb, our two sons, were little, and we lived in an apartment, and then we lived, the seminary had all these houses and around the seminary, and we lived in a house there until I graduated from seminary. And then when we graduated from seminary, we had to move into a house. We found a house in the same neighborhood, and we rented it when I graduated in 1986, and we lived there. And then I got an internship in 1986, and we moved to Houston, Texas. Bethany was born the last year I was in seminary when we graduated. So she was like a 1 or 2 years old when we moved to Houston, Texas, where I did my internship in the Presbyterian Church in America. And somebody in that church that we were doing my internship, he had a house that we could rent. So we rented that house. And then he sold the house, and so we had to move. So we looked around, Carol and I, and we found a nice house, and not far from the church, not far. Well, Carol had to drive almost 45 minutes to work, a hospital there in downtown Houston. But we found this house that we rented. It was a really nice house, and then we got a dog. I told you about Macintosh, the West Highland Terrier. And right across the street was an elementary school the kids could go to, and a block up was the library, a public library. It was a nice little house. It had a fence around it, and I used the garage for my library. I had all these bookshelves and I had books and boxes, and so we lived there until after 5 years of being in Houston. I told you I couldn't get a church. I finished my internship in 2 years, and in 1991 we moved to Holland, Michigan. And I was 39 years old. We moved up here because, as I mentioned, Carol grew up here in Holland. Her mother was still alive. Her father had passed away. Her mother was still living, and she has uncles and aunts and cousins and nephews. Her younger brother, who's going to be here this afternoon with his wife, they never had children. He's retired. So then when we moved here to Holland, we looked around, and at first we found this house providentially, and we rented it the first 5 years because the woman who owned it was like in her 80s, and she couldn't sell the house because, for certain reasons. But when the woman died, we rented this house to buy it. So when the woman who had owned it passed away, we bought the house from her brother. And that was about 35 years ago. We bought this house. Well, we bought it around 32 years ago. And so this has been my home. This is the most longest we've lived in one place, is here in this house. And it's like my hermit hut. It's like I have my own study here down the lower level. Now that the kids are gone, I can have all my books, and it's a refuge from the storm. It's a place that I can retreat to, and I'm very, 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 very thankful for a home, because before I married Carol, I didn't have a home. Well, that's where the Hermit Hut comes from. I mentioned that when I was in high school, a guy I knew, he used to buy psychedelics from, Dana Brown, had built this little hermit hut, or a little house, a little shack. You could barely stand up in it, on my foster mother's property there in the Richmond Hills. And he built it. And of course, he didn't live there. He just built it, and he lived in other places. But I would use his little shack. I would live there off and on from about 1973 until 1978. But what happened just before I left California to go to Bible college, one night I was in the Hermit Hut down in the woods, and I spilt all this lamp fluid that caught fire underneath it went through the cracks of the floor of the little wood shack, the hermit hut, and it burned up. And it burned to the ground. And so I didn't have any more hermit hut. I had no place to go. And I did work for a while in a 7-Eleven store, and I rented an apartment for about 4 or 5 months. But then I lost my job, came to an end, and then I lived with my girlfriend at that time. She had an extra bedroom. And then around that time is when I left to go to Bible college. And I got a job just before I left Richmond to go to Bible college. I had contacted Mel Trotter's mission in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and got a job there as a night supervisor. And they gave me a room on the 3rd floor of this building, a little tiny room with a bed and a little desk. And that's where I lived when I was going to Bible college, I would come home, come to the rescue mission, get up early in the mornings and give devotions, read the Bible, and at night I would check men in. I was a night supervisor, and then I would go to classes. And then I met Carol right around that time, and we were married 6 months later, and we rented a little tiny little apartment in this house that had, the landlady lived upstairs with a companion, and the first floor was divided into 2 little apartments, and we lived in the back apartment. It was just a living room, a little tiny kitchen, 1 bedroom, and we had to share the bathroom in the hallway. And we lived there until we graduated from Reformed Bible College. But this is the Hermit Hut, this house here in Holland, Michigan. I call the Hermit Hut, and I still have before me. This is my soup cup when I lived in the woods, and I had a little camp stove, and I would cook soup, and I would drink it out of this little cup. And I still have the Hermit Hut, and I still have a knife from that time period. So that's why this is the Hermit Hut. So anyway, it's going on 26 minutes. I do pray you're having a happy new year. Hope you have a blessed 2025. Thank you for all the comments over the years. I've been doing this 8 years now. Thank you for subscribing. I really have been blessed in this, making these videos and meeting you guys and interacting and sharing my love for books and my love for the Lord Jesus Christ, and hope that we can continue making videos and continue going on. So yeah, pray for me. I don't know what's physically wrong with me, why these woozy spells, and it's just kind of strange, but the Lord's giving grace. So once again, is my thing cross? Yeah, people wonder about this. It's a Greek Orthodox. I like the cross because it mentions the crucifixion of Christ, and that's why I wear it. Not because I'm Eastern Orthodox, but because I like religious symbols. I mean, I even have throughout here different religious symbols from different Christian traditions. So I'll sign off. May the Lord bless. Until next time, bye.